Small businesses and entrepreneurs want staff to collaborate seamlessly with each other and customers, whether they're working from home, the office, or remotely. Achieving this takes secure, digital-first, and integrated tools that help people connect anytime, anywhere, on any device. That's why Microsoft has launched Teams Essentials, a standalone solution designed for SMBs. At just £3 per user per month, it's the most affordable all-in-one solution around and can transform how your people communicate. With powerful instant video meetings, shared documents, and files that are always quick and easy to find, as well as persistent chat, meeting recordings, and searchable transcripts, it's got everything your small business needs to make flexible working, well, work. To find out more about how technology can save you time and money while improving communications and collaboration, please visit aka.ms/hybrid SMB.
Hello and welcome to Small Business Snippets, the podcast from smallbusiness.co.uk. I'm your host, Anna Jordan. Today we have a special episode brought to you by Microsoft. I'm joined by Nico Chariton, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Microsoft, and Tiffany St. James, founder of Curate42 and Transmute Consultancies. We'll be talking about hybrid working and the tech that can make it happen. Hello both, how are you doing?
Very good.
Very well, thank you. And yourself?
Yeah, very well. Very excited about this podcast. So before we jump into questions, tell me a little bit about yourselves, just a brief introduction. Nico, if you'd like to start.
Yeah, sure. I'm Nico. I've been with Microsoft for about 11 years now, and I lead our go-to-market strategy for the modern work and security solutions in the small business space from a Microsoft perspective. So everything around Teams, Windows 365, Office 365, and all of those beautiful things that we know and love very much, that kind of lands with me.
Great. How about you, Tiffany?
Thank you so much, Anna. So I'm Tiffany St. James and I'm a digital strategist by trade. At Curate42, we help large businesses and complex businesses with deeper digital engagement. So really helping to understand new technologies and really how that can help people connect with their audiences.
Fantastic. And with that in mind, we've seen so much change in the past couple of years. So how has hybrid working changed the game really for small businesses? Tiffany, let's start with you.
Yeah, certainly. So I think business owners more than anything, and particularly small business owners, have to be more adept, really. I mean, small businesses who are perhaps, more flexible, having a smaller remit of people, but really you've got to understand technology, be able to set your own meetings, be able to interact and engage, be able to collaborate, be able to understand new tools and how they can help you to be able to communicate with your customers and your peers, and that has accelerated so much in the last few years. So there's some top lines, if that helps.
Great. How about you, Nico? How's it changed for you?
One of the key things that we see in the market is how businesses are pivoting to understand the employee experience, right? Because if you go back in time, the move and the shift to remote work was very messy, and there was a very steep learning curve, as Tiffany says, on adapting to managing new tools and stuff like that. And then working from home was very diverse for different people. Think about the grad that has a bunch of housemates all dialing into calls at the same time, gets very loud, or people homeschooling the kids. It was very, very challenging. We've seen an increase of 250% in meetings. There was no breaks between meetings, so there is a lot of fatigue. It took a toll on, I would say, physical and mental well-being. And this is something that as we open back up, we see the paradox of, I want to keep the flexibility that I gained through the pandemic, but I want to have more in contact collaboration with my colleagues, which is a real paradox. And we're trying to figure out, well, how do we do this? And what we see now is that people are rethinking the why do I work and how do I work? And they have a new worth it equation, right? It's something that they are thinking about whether I need to stay or not in this company to fulfill my dreams even. In fact, 41% of UK employees are thinking about changing their employer soon. So it's something that it's very tangible. We see it in the market. There is a great reshuffle there, and the war for talent is heating up.
Just responding to that really, Nico, and one of the things that we're noticing as well, certainly in that waking up of who am I and what do I want to do. For organizations, looking at how different parts of their teams in demographics are responding to the hybrid challenge. So you have, perhaps, older, more established employees who are actually very well self-directed, but actually perhaps a little bit more resistance to come into the office unless it's in, professional services. Your accountancy and your lawyers are all brilliantly back in and in front of the office. But actually, then you have a younger audience that perhaps are really keen to come into the office because that's part of the social life that they have and actually learning on site, but actually perhaps aren't as well directed at home. So just another nuance and flavour that we know organisations are dealing with, if that's helpful.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we usually talk to business owners about is rethinking the business and the approach in kind of three angles, I would say. On the people side is prioritizing on this well-being efforts being at the center of the hybrid strategy, providing the flexibility for people to choose when to work and how to work from where, of course, with ground rules based on the type of business that they have. And then the leaders having that role as a model of those behaviors that they need to bring if they want to create a culture of hybrid work. The second would be about the places. I'm thinking about the human interaction being so critical still for having great culture, and then how they have responsibility to create this combination of physical and virtual, but rethinking the role that the office space plays, right? There is no reason to go to the office. Like, you need to make it worth. Why would I waste time commuting if there is nothing for me, right? So, and there's no one size fits all. Going back to what we were talking about, the person who might want to go to the office to find peace and quiet from the housemates, or the person who might stay at home to find peace and quiet because they have a great setup of a home office. And finally, the process is, how do you use tools as an enabler? The tools are not going to create the culture. That's very clear, right? It's a culture first, tools as an enabler, and then defining those policies and procedures for asynchronous communication and collaboration, not only synchronous. And it's interesting because there is a perception of, if I'm not in a meeting, I'm not working. And it's very tricky, right? Flexibility doesn't have to be equal to always on working. And we need to create that clarity with employees. And this is very clear. And finally, on security, right? You need to make sure that you have a zero trust approach to cybersecurity because it's getting tough out there.
All vital points, and I totally agree with the hybrid technology being an enabler. And you yourself, Tiffany, what kind of collaboration software do you use to sort of meet these things that Nico has laid out?
Yeah, really interesting to hear your points, Nico. So essentially, one of the things that I do help organizations and clients deliver is help them with more agile working. So perhaps in a pre-hybrid world, if you like, then you had people working perhaps in silos, even in small businesses. The marketing team might stick together and the design team might stick together and sequentially pass projects to each other. Whereas actually what we've seen during hybrid working is being able to help them work in more the method, I guess, in a more agile way that was developed for, software development sprints, if you like, a stand-up morning meeting, which is very easily enabled by great technology. To be able to pull everyone together for a quick 20-minute morning meeting is actually probably easier to do digitally, where there are people in the room and outside of the room in a hybrid way, than it would be to gather everyone if they were all in person in the premises in one place. So certainly using collaboration software to be able to really change the way in which organizations work in a more agile and collaborative fashion. And of course, baked into great tools are collaboration software such as whiteboarding, being able to, collect meeting notes in situ, being able, when someone's speaking, to be able to comment on that, or, to be able to understand how what you're saying is landing in real time, that people wouldn't perhaps interrupt you in a in-person meeting, but can easily, perhaps chat within the tools themselves. So looking at collaborative documentation and co-creating things together, whereby you might actually do something collaboratively asynchronously, as Nico was saying, in different times, and then come together to be able to discuss that. That's the way in which that I'm using these technologies to be able to, help people work more productively, I guess.
Yeah, and there's solutions that can work for different types of employees. Say employees that are typically a bit more quiet might find it easier to speak up over, in a written format rather than in person, where they might feel a little bit drowned out. But one of the bigger issues that we've seen recently, and especially in the past couple of months, has been a steep rise in costs. So, Nico, how has that affected small businesses' ability to access this kind of collaboration tech, and how can they access it in a cost-efficient kind of way?
Yeah, this is one of the main concerns that small businesses have today. And they come to Microsoft for that very reason. In fact, one of the things that we see that when people moved or businesses moved from the all in person to all remote, they went to any type of technology they could find to make it work and survive. And that was something that was very inspiring to see, I would say, at the time. And then very quickly, business leaders realized that, oh, there's a lot of benefits from this digitization. We've seen retail shops doing curbside pickup with click and collect orders. We've seen fitness trainers doing streaming of their classes. We've seen therapists doing video conferencing with their patients. We've even seen dentists taking checkups and screening online, which is fantastic. And it's really great. However, very quickly the cost can starting to add up. And going back to what Tiffany was saying, if you think about it, you have document collaboration, you have file storage in the cloud, you have chat and video collaboration, you have forms and surveys for your customers, you have process automation, you have cybersecurity. Everything adds up. And then you end up paying like £60 per user per month, and it's just not sustainable for many businesses. And this is where they come to Microsoft, because we do have that hero product, the Microsoft 365 Business Premium, tailored for a small and medium business at just £16.60 per month, right? So that goes from the 60 to the 16 very quickly. You save a lot of cost, and you can operate and have all of that to have a gold standard of technology that supports that growth that you want and keeps you with that edge and benefits of the cloud. Or even you don't drag behind if you don't adopt technology, right? Because that's another thing. Competitive advantage, using technology as a competitive advantage of not falling behind, is key for business as well.
But I suppose, however great the technology is, there's always going to be some kind of issues there, sort of like lag or, things that can't really be helped. So, Tiffany, you collaborate with other clients and entrepreneurs. So what kind of challenges do you face in making these interactions?
Well, absolutely, Anna. I mean, I'm a good believer, of course, that there's a great many benefits in reach and time savings with virtual and hybrid working as opposed to in person. But of course, there are challenges. And one of the things that I spot quite often is that clients and people that I'm working with and collaborating with have different stages of digital maturity. Some are more experienced than others. And therefore, you want to ensure that when you're working within a collaborative environment, that everyone feels that they have the tools and can use the tools in the right way to be able to do that meeting, that job, that virtual conference, whatever it might be. You don't want anyone to feel silly, and not everyone likes to be able to ask those open questions when they're perhaps with people they don't know. So it's really identifying that and ensuring. One of the things that you can do to help with that, of course, is onboarding. So making sure that everyone's aware of the tools that they have in advance, and not dumping them straight into a live event or a live conference, but bringing them into perhaps a safe area and getting them used to it. Assuming that no one has used a tool before, perhaps, and reminding people at the start of either a meeting or an event of the facilities that we'll be using, so that it's actually, setting that good ground, I think, before you meet it or use a piece of technology. And that's setting out, I guess, the rules of engagement. How are we going to use this? How are we going to work together today? And making that really clear for everyone. Of course, it's very difficult sometimes to see non-verbal cues, or they're more limited perhaps in virtual or hybrid ways of being able to understand perhaps body language or look at the things that aren't perhaps said. And we know, of course, aside from the things that you said, Anna, that people suffer from digital fatigue because they're online so much more of their day perhaps than they were before.
Oh, I know if I joined a company and I had to do a presentation straight away, I would retreat 100%. Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot in there about culture and how different companies handle themselves and how different employees and respecting their needs. But for the more technical side of, say, video conferencing, Nico, how can small businesses sort of mitigate these?
I think one of the
These
things that we've done over the past few years is iterate on product development, because we realized that the products that we had when we entered the pandemic were potentially not ideal for what we needed during or after the pandemic, right? So a lot of iteration in terms of adding the ability to raise your hand or going to breakout rooms and stuff like that was really enriching. And as Tiffany said, the digital fatigue was a critical problem we needed to address. And a couple of little things that we added into the products were the ability to set up by default a meeting a bit shorter. So if you usually set an hour, it will cut 15 minutes in the end. Or if it is a 30-minute, you can cut 5. Also, during the meeting, you get a 5-minute warning when you are about to close. So you wrap up and you give people time, right? We have studies looking at the brain's activity on how 5-minute breaks in between meetings can really help you with your cognitive activity to reset. So that is really good. Going back to the nonverbal cues, this is something that for me it's really important. I love presenting, and one of the things that I found very hard remotely is how do I bring myself and my gestures, my hands into the presentation, and we added things like Cameo into PowerPoint and Teams, so you can embed yourself as part of the content. So you are at the front and you're pointing to the slides and you feel like a news presenter, and that breaks through that. Or even if we look more into the future, Mesh into Microsoft Teams is our metaverse immersive reality where you can use an avatar instead of your camera. So if you cannot turn on your video, your avatar can move and do the gestures that you cannot do because you're in an awkward space. Those type of little things will help us as we embrace them more and more. And then how do we break the differences between being in the room and being remotely? So if you think about it, if you're in the room, you might miss that chat or the reaction that you had when you went remote. So coming in with your phone as a companion and having that through the Teams mobile app, very easy to access from, that's great. Or how do you get better understanding of who's talking or the transcription if you're remote? So we have now intelligent cameras that capture who's talking, and you have speaker recognition. Those type of things really, really help. And finally, going back to the way you work and measuring, is like fitness. If you measure, you can improve. So we have Viva Insights, a module within Teams that helps you understand your patterns of work, how many extra hours you're working, how many time or focus time you have for yourself. And it gives you practical tips to follow up on things that you committed to block yourself some focus time, to connect with your managers or your direct reports if you haven't connected for a while. All of those things. And as a leader, they can give you proactive insights into how the organization is working, so you can proactively reach out to them with coaching to help them cope or prevent burnout.
Right, and there's so much in there, and a big part of what you were talking about was the future proofing and the ongoing developing tech, but there are also vulnerabilities in that tech. So I'd like to move on and talk a bit about cybersecurity, if you wouldn't mind. It's a concern for a lot of small and micro business owners. So how can they improve their cybersecurity in a cost-effective way, Nico?
Yeah, this is a top of mind for most small and medium-sized businesses. In fact, 65% of SMBs have been suffering attacks in the last year in the UK, and we've seen a 300% increase in cyber attacks all up. So when you think about all of these, it can be a bit scary. So we need to make sure that we help small businesses protect and focus on what they want to focus, that is their business. And in addition to the multi-factor authentication and to the phishing and ransomware protection that we had in the email, we now introduced Microsoft Defender for Business. That is an enterprise-grade device protection for PCs, iOS, Android devices, etc. And this is different to the traditional thinking of the antivirus, which is what most business owners have, and they think as protection on cybersecurity. But I usually think of the antivirus being similar to installing a door in your house. It's a must-have. It's a very basic thing, and without it, it would be a problem, and it's very obvious. But that is not enough now, because if you think about it, even without a key, you could unlock that door. Think about the last time you called a locksmith. Having Microsoft Defender for Business is like having a reinforced door with multiple locks and giving the specific key to only individuals that need access to it. And then you have also a building manager going around your house, checking for those doors and windows in case there is a broken glass and replacing those. Then you have a CCTV monitoring system that is checking everything that is happening. And you have security staff on call that as soon as the alert happens, they come, take the burglar out and bring it to the authorities. This is what we have with Microsoft Defender for Business. It's moving from prevention only to prevention, detection, and automatic remediation. So businesses now can be safe and mitigating most of those things that happen and we know of because we have all the signals around the world. And this is in a very cost-effective way because it is already included in the product that I mentioned before, Microsoft 365 Business Premium. Or if they don't have that and they want to purchase separately, it only costs them £2.30 per user per month.
Yeah, and Tiffany, how does this relate to your experience of managing cybersecurity and the sort of tools that you use?
Yeah, absolutely. Nico, I love your analogy that you mentioned, particularly, cybersecurity can seem, such a heavy subject for people who are trying to navigate it, but to equate it to, how you manage your house, I think is a great way of being able to do it. So some of the way that I advise, perhaps smaller businesses is actually looking at how is cybersecurity affected when you're out of the office, not just in the office. In the office, there's these brilliant tools, aren't there, as Nico was just explaining, to be able to help organizations, but not everyone thinks about the cybersecurity when they're working remotely, whether that's from home or within a cafe. So, some of the really common things that are really easy to identify is if you can get a separate router, get a separate Wi-Fi from the household Wi-Fi that your children might be on, right? Because they're probably not as cyber conscious as you are necessarily. And therefore, they may compromise their devices on your Wi-Fi that you're using that might compromise your devices, right? So just be aware of that. And also, you're going to benefit from better bandwidth if they're not on the same one as yourself. If you're recycling your devices, make sure that they're securely wiped, including household devices that are shared by other people within your household. Make sure those devices are wiped clearly if you're recycling those. Know that smart devices can listen. You might disable them or not have them in the room that you're working in particularly. And some really tangible things that we can all do with no fuss at all, which is make sure that you have double authentication on the apps that you use, so that there's a level of security where it's recognizing yourself through your phone number as well, potentially. Changing default passwords on devices that are given to you, on software that is given to you. Making sure that all your software is up to date, because embedded in the software that we use, of course, is better all the time in terms of kind of better security. Store files in the cloud, the collaborative software, great security there. And leaders in businesses, even small businesses, have sometimes different administrative privileges and therefore might restrict admin or super admin access to some of the tools that they're using, and making sure that when people leave their business, a really, really common one, they have those passwords, they change the passwords of their entry to apps, which, sometimes we're trying to get people access back to services all of the time within small businesses. So there's some really tangible things that all small businesses can look at.
That's amazing. And there's so many things that every small business can apply to how they operate. It's great stuff. Well, actually, that's it for me, unless there's anything either of you would like to add.
It was great to meet you today and great to have this discussion with you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, it was great to be here. Thank you.
You can find out more about Microsoft Teams at aka.ms/hybrid SMB. You can also visit smallbusiness.co.uk for more on cybersecurity and hybrid working. Remember to like us on Facebook at Small Business Experts, follow us on Twitter at Small Business UK, all lowercase, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, linked in the description. Until next time, thank you for listening.